Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We are at a very famous story. We are at a very famous narrative. All of you know this story for the most part. And so I want us to look carefully at it like we do always. What I've brought, and I'm going to hope to remember to bring it every time because I'm preparing with it at home, and it's a schlep to bring it every time. But I'm going to be sharing with you from the Robert Alter translation and commentary on Torah. He, as you know, is from a literary approach and has just completed an entire translation of the entire corpus of Hebrew sacred scripture. So it was all over the news. It was all over NPR. It was all over the New York Times. So I will be sharing with you from his translation whenever I feel like it's interesting in the ways that it varies from ours.
He's still alive.
Yes, he's still alive, and just completed this huge project. I mean, it's a project of a lifetime to translate all of the Hebrew scriptures, not just the 5 books of Torah, Psalms, Chronicle. I mean, like everything, to look at every word of everything in the Hebrew and try to decide, do you try to capture the literal meaning, or do you use an English word for the Hebrew that better gets at what he believes the Hebrew idiom is trying to... It's like saying lick the windows in French, right? That means window shopping, right? To the French, window shopping means you'd be shopping for windows, right? So it's the work of a lifetime to look at every word and try to figure out how to translate it.
And you feel his translation is more to your way of thinking than some of the others?
I think it's an interesting dialogue between... I always find it a very interesting conversation between translations, but I find that we're usually using my JPS translation and your women's commentary translation, which is not usually that different than mine. What makes mine different from yours sometimes is all the stuff below the line, where it will say literally or actually, right? Because it's the commentator commenting on the JPS translation. So sometimes you hear me give you that dialogue, but now we're going to have Robert Alter, who has his own reasoning for the way he's translated stuff. All right, so let's look at so I want you to look at this with fresh eyes, okay? I know you know the story. We all know the story, but we know parts of the story, right? And we know impressions of the story, and we know the way the story's been summarized. So let's look at this with completely new eyes, as a piece of Torah that we're studying together. So we're at chapter 6, verse 9, as we begin Parshat Noach.
This is the line of Noach. Noach was a righteous man. He was blameless in his age. Noach walked with God. Noach begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth became corrupt before God. The earth was filled with lawlessness. When God saw how corrupt the earth was, for all flesh had corrupted its ways on earth, God said to Noah, I have decided to put an end to all flesh, for the earth is filled with lawlessness because of them. I am about to destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make it an ark with compartments, and cover it inside and outside and out with pitch. This is how you shall make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Make an opening for daylight in the ark and terminate it within a cubit of the top. Put the entrance to the ark in its side. Make it with bottom, second, and third decks.
Okay. Is that the rest of the instructions?
There's more.
Okay, give me a little more.
Okay, for my part, I am about to bring the flood. Waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh under the sky in which there is breath of life. Everything on earth shall perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark with your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives. And of all that lives, of all flesh, you shall take 2 of each into the ark to keep alive with you. They shall be male and female. From birds of every kind, cattle of every kind of creeping thing on earth, 2 of each shall come to you to stay alive. For your part, Take everything that is eaten and store it away to serve as food for you and for them. Noach did so just as God commanded him, so he did.
Okay. So our section begins, Eile Toldot Noach. So we are now getting an introduction to the line of Noach. So we have from creation to Noach, and all of a sudden with Noach we get Eile Toldot Noach. Before this we just get this one begot, this one begot, this one begot, this one begot, this one. We get a genealogical list at the priestly source. Remember, the priestly source loves genealogies. And so that's what we get till now. And all of a sudden, we get Eile Toldot Noach. So from Adam to Noach is 10 generations. Look in the text. Look back. This one begot, this one begot, this one begot, this one begot, this one. 10 generations. Adam to Noach, 10 generations. Noach to Abraham, any guesses?
10
generations. Exactly. 10 generations. Noach is the pivot. Noach is the center between the, antediluvians and what it's going to take post-deluge to get from Noach to Avraham. And it's important to note that because all male life is destroyed other than Noach's sons, Noach's line, that means by definition, Noach will become
the patriarch.
He will become the ancestor of everybody who comes later. So for the rabbis, that's an important point. We all descend from Noach. Everybody descends from Noach. Okay? It's not like there was a pocket of people that hung out over here on a really, really, really high mountain and made it, and somehow they are not part of this family history. For the rabbis, for our tradition, everybody comes through Adam, right, to Noach, and then our family story is going to become a particular story with Avraham. So it takes 20 generations to get from Adam to this particular narrative about this one family that turns into this crazy business with Avraham. All right, so we're getting a new thing here. We're getting the start of a new thing, a new set of generations. Eile Toldot Noach, Ish Tzadik Tamim. So he is tzaddik. What is tzaddik? Righteous. He is tzaddik. And tamim. What is tamim?
It says blameless. In this translation.
Says what?
Blameless.
So Robert Alter says the same. So if you go to a Jewish cemetery and you see on a headstone, Ish Tam, that is a good thing. Mm-hmm. A person who is Tam. It can mean simple in other uses, meaning not a good thing. But in general, when you're using it about a person, lauding that person, they are free. They're simple in that they are free from all the complications of a personality that is yucky. Like pure, yes. Yes, it has the sense of pure.
I thought Tom was taste, flavor.
Ta'am.
Oh, ta'am.
Ta'am. There's an ayin,
Yeah.
right? But we usually say tam, but it's ta'am. And this is tam.
The subtlety.
Tav mem, right. Mm-hmm.
There's an interesting comment at the bottom here.
Yes.
It says this is the line of Noah, and then it says Noach again, and it makes the comment that the first person Noach gave birth to was himself.
In that...
It says this is the line of Noah. Noah, in that he had to discover himself before he could move forward.
Lovely. Because we have... So he's saying there's a comma. If you do Eile Toldot Noach, colon, Noach ish tzaddik, right? But of course, the rabbis are going to look at Eile Toldot Noach, blah, 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 blah. So here's the generations of Noach. Noach is first. He has to first deliver himself, and then he can deliver generations. Lovely. Love the rabbis. All right. Okay. So he was a righteous man, tzaddik. Tamim haya bidorotav. So he was righteous and tam in his generations. Et ha-Elohim hithalech Noach. So with God did Noach walk. So he is righteous in his generation. So the rabbis have to ask, the commentators have to ask, why add in his generation? What other generation would he be righteous in? Like, of course you live in your own generation. Like, duh. Like, so it feels like Department of Redundancy department. Like, well, you're going to be righteous in someone else's. I mean, you're right. That doesn't make any sense. So, the famous commentary is that what it is for the rabbis is that this is a qualifier. He's not stam, tzaddik, and tamim. He is relatively tzaddik and tamim, given what's going on around him. That given his generation, comparatively speaking, he is tzaddik and tamim.
Because the world was terrible.
Correct. Right. But so one of the questions we have to ask is, why do the rabbis need to qualify tzaddik and tamim? Why can't they just say, in his generation? Okay.
Because he was human?
He was human, for sure. So we have to ask, what makes the rabbis need to qualify Noah's righteousness? So let's hold that question and see if it doesn't come up for you, unless Mehmet it already has for you.
I remember this commentary says this is Noah's chronicle.
This is Noah's chronicle. That works.
And what I understand from that is he wrote it himself.
Okay. So Noah writes this himself. So you're saying that Noach is qualifying being tzaddik and tamim, maybe himself. Okay.
The rabbis don't want him to be held up as the standard for righteousness.
Why not? He follows God's orders. He follows God's commands. He makes an ark. He does all this work. He puts all this feed aside for the animals. He takes care of the animals day and night while the flood is going on.
Moses is coming.
Huh?
The writer knows Moses is coming.
The writer knows Moses is coming, but that still doesn't make Noach less righteous or tam. That Moshe's bit greater than everybody. It doesn't make us less righteous.
Lets us identify with him because he's not the only one. So we too can be a part of this.
No. So
teaching of Rabbi Bernstein.
No. Bert knows. Bert has learned with me for a long time, and so when we get there, Bert's going to tell us.
Let him tell us now.
Where the rabbis have a problem and why they have to qualify Noach. Okay.
I think.
So you know it because you just said it. All right. The earth. Let's look at 11, verse 11. Yeah.
Verse 11.
Verse 11.
The earth became corrupt before God. The earth was filled with lawlessness and
Okay.
disarray.
So this is what God notices, right? God sees that the earth has become corrupt. In Robert Alter's translation, it is filled with outrage. Humankind had been enjoined to multiply and fill the earth, but the proliferation of human population leads to a proliferation of lawless behavior. This is one of several verbal echoes of the creation story, suggesting first a perversion of creation by man, and then a reversal of creation by God. So God says, Pru orvu, umil'u et haaretz, be fruitful and multiply and fill the whole earth, meaning to make it good. And instead, they fill it with what? In Hebrew? Hamas. Hamas. They are filling it with Hamas. Whoa. So that is not what God wanted. Hamas is a perversion of what God wanted. Right? And so they have now perverted what God wanted for human beings as they proliferated, and so God will now be undoing creation because of what human beings have done.
We just had a fire. I think we better watch out for a flood.
So,
What laws will they not do it? There hadn't been yet Noahide laws.
It's nothing about law. It does not say they broke the law.
lawlessness.
Well, what it is they are behaving in ways that one would understand as part of human society to be right outside, which is why he says outrage. He doesn't say
The
lawlessness.
translation of this one is violence.
So, right. So Hamas is violence, is chaos that's not a good chaos. And if we talk about creation being about order, pulling things apart day and night, land and sky, right? When you separate things, and that's how creation stands. Remember our ancient Near Eastern cosmology? The waters above, the waters below. It is the separation that allows creation to hold. This kind of chaos they have undone the ordering in terms of human behavior that would sustain creation. And so now those waters are going to collapse. And that's what we have. The separation of powers has been eroded. And so the waters are God is going to undo creation by bringing those waters back together.
Is this only a Hebrew word, Hamas, or is it also Arabic?
You think the group took a Hebrew name?
I just wondered why they would choose that name anyway.
Because it means the same thing.
But they would choose a name that means evil and violence.
Violence and destruction and chaos. That's their purpose. That is exactly their purpose.
So there's no name that is their goal except to destroy.
Correct. The enemy. To destroy and confound the enemy. 100%. Using violence. And the terror that comes with chaos, that is violent chaos. That is the goal. That is the jihad. Okay.
Maybe I need help.
Well, so do I.
If we look at Lilith and the Lilith story, then are we going to invalidate the entire first attempt by God to create humankind? Or do we accept the fact that the demonic Lilith was God's creation, and therefore from the very beginning we were doomed?
So I don't think Lilith is demonized in the garden.
Right.
She's
But she does,
uppity.
she's uppity, and what she does invalidates, in some senses, the initial commands of God.
It doesn't really invalidate those commands of God. God takes care of it. You're not going to be a suitable helpmeet for our Adam.
She's conceptually very disorganized and unhappy person. Are we told stories?
You know what? The rabbis don't really care, right? They don't care about her motivation. That's her problem. She's uppity and won't listen to. Right, think about their agenda. She won't listen to Adam and behave and doesn't know her place. What happens to women like that? As you said last time, they are describing reality. What happens to women like that? They are sent over the fence. Right?
The shadow of Lilith in a way lies right across the 10 generations to Noah.
The shadow of Noah, of Lilith, does what?
And it stretches all the way across the generations.
Sure.
To Noah.
Sure. To all women. And to men who are dealing with her forever. Y'all are the ones who really have to deal with her, not us. She doesn't tempt us. Right. Like, we're strong. We're amazing. But it's you weak creatures, you men, that she preys on, right? And makes her minions with. So this is all rabbinic. And the rabbis are dealing with an original female that they don't know what to do with. And so it's an opportunity for them to, of course, lay their worldview on the relationship between the genders and what causes the shadow of Lilith to extend all the way to Noach and possibly beyond is women tend to not know their place.
Amen.
Amen. All right. And I know that you know what I'm talking about because I know who you're married to. So.
I didn't say that.
And you know, because you know I mean it as a compliment, and so would everyone in here. Okay, so all the world is Hamas. Vayar Elohim et haaretz v'hine nishchata ki yishchit kol basar et darko al haaretz. So God sees how corrupt the earth was. All flesh had corrupted its ways on earth. And God says to Noach, I am now about to destroy them with the earth. Okay? So make for yourself, what is he? He's going to make an ark of cypress wood, right? And so we get all of the explanations about the ark. So this is the longest speech God has given. Other than the punishment given to Adam and Eve, the consequences of their actions in the garden, whichever actions we decide those are, they other than that speech, this is a longer speech. This is the longest speech so far in the Torah by God. And most of it is the instruction to build the ark. So one of the commentaries, I've read so many, I don't know which one, was saying that the same way that like God has kind of let humanity do its thing, now all of a sudden God's like, on it.
Enough.
Right? Enough. And God is being very specific, and this is the ark, and this is what it looks like, and this is how you make it, and this is how big it is, and right, these are the measurements. So God is very much now present and involved in the reset that's going to be happening to creation. All right. We read about bringing floodwaters, yeah? And bringing 2 of each kind of animal into the ark. Noach has to put away, he and his family have to put away food for all of the animals and provisions for themselves for the entirety of the time they're going to be in the teva, and presumably until life can regenerate, vegetation can regenerate to feed those animals once the waters recede. Because so imagine like how many provisions that is.
It doesn't say a male and a female of each.
You sure it does? Of course it does. Of course it does, right?
Any indication given? Is there
Going and inspecting. You're supposed to inspect every animal and then go and inspect, like a cat. You have to really.
I mean, forget cats. That's a little like beetles, like caterpillars, like. Yeah, I have to believe the rabbis assume God gave some scientific assistance to Noach and his family.
charge of inspecting?
Oh my gosh.
It says pure beast and impure beast.
I'm sorry? Are you reading ahead?
Yes.
Okay. Well, don't do that. Don't do that. All right. Chapter 7, Bert.
Any indication given how long?
Okay, then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark with all your household, for you alone have I found righteous before me in this generation. Of every pure animal you shall take 7 pairs, males and their mates, and of every animal that is not pure, 2, a male and its mate. Of the birds of the sky also 7 pairs, male and female, to keep seed alive upon all the earth. For in 7 days' time I shall make it rain upon the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and I will blot out from the earth all existence that I created. And Noah did just as the Lord commanded him.
Okay.
40 days and 40 nights.
All right. So this is one of those places where we see very clearly the seam between 2 variant traditions. We have 2 different sources here. Yeah? Yes, Nance, our Bible, the same one that's on your bookshelf at home, has this variation in it. Because the ancient author is not concerned. The redactor has to be a little worried about not making it sound crazy, but that is not the primary objective. If you have 2 variant traditions, you had better represent them both. That is more important, right? Whether it's, right, the war of northern aggression, as I was raised to call it, right, or the Civil War, right? You have to have both versions in there, or no one's going to buy this new national history. We have to remember that. We go, this is silly. But it's not. It's the purpose of this is to bring different peoples together as one people. That means you have to represent sinkers and floaters.
Fair and balanced.
No, not fair and balanced, because it's exactly the opposite of fair and balanced. It's this one, and over and against that oppositionally is this one. They don't line up. Exactly right. Do you like floaters or sinkers? You can't have a matzo ball that's both. Right? Or it's a failure, right? Like it needs to be one or the other. So both have to be here. Yes.
So I'm looking, my observation is that God creates, everything's good, God goes off and there's lots going on in the universe, checks back in and sees that Adam and Eve are covering themselves, and what's going on here? They get expelled. He goes off, he comes back 10 generations later, what's going on here? I have to destroy the world. And so my question is, God does not at any point think this human experiment is a failure.
God 100% understands that this human experiment is a failure. 100% understands that. And says, and it says that God regrets making, because Noach seems to be tzaddik and tamim enough, right? That it's a way to start over with a known product. So apparently Noach has proven that he's not doing the things that have made human beings a failed experiment.
So as long as there's one, going back to Sodom and Gomorrah,
Great Greek story.
One, God is willing to.
Well, we'll see. We'll see when we get to Sodom and Gomorrah what the reasoning, what the deal is there.
So God blames him or herself for this failure?
It's a very interesting question. Does God blame God's self for this failure? God regrets. God regrets having made human beings. And so for a long time, I preached hard on this parsha because that's what happens when we regret. When we stay in regret, all we can do is destroy.
Because based on what she was saying, it's almost as if I shouldn't have left him alone. I should have kept a better eye on things.
God's problem, however, is, and God's problem hasn't changed. That God's problem here is that, so what if God had kept a better eye on things? So what? As long as human beings have free will, there's nothing God can do except what? Come down. Look at the Tower of Babel. God comes down, confounds them, spreads them out. Now they can't understand each other. So God intervenes gently to try to say, y'all are not behaving. You're not doing what I told you to do, which is fill the world. That's at the end of our story. And God says, all right, so God confounds them and they can't understand each other anymore, right? And so God intervenes in that sense, but God can't intervene in terms of if human beings choose to create Hamas. If they build a society that is Hamas, what can God really do, right? If God's going to live with this creature and stay with a creature that has free will. And it seems that God, as horrible as this may feel on some levels, like a tantrum, on some levels, if we can step back from it, on some levels it makes sense. And God actually comes around to a hopefulness about humanity by saving Noach and his family. I know it sounds crazy, but if we step back from all of our stuff about how can you destroy innocent, if we just step back from that for a second, I think this actually is hopeful. Because God doesn't say, you know what, this free will thing, that's not going to work. They're going to continue to make Hamas no matter what I do. That's not what God says to God's self. God says, if I start with maybe a purer seed, who, and they've had some experience, unlike Adam, who's like, doesn't know what the heck is going on, right? So maybe this will be a new start. And at the end of the story, God promises not to do this again. Like, God seems to be impacted by the destruction in a way that God says, I'm not going to do this again. So I think actually, I know it's crazy, but I think this is actually, in its own way, a hopeful story about humanity and about God's relationship and assessment of humanity.
I'll go even farther than that. It's almost as if God has now learned how to deal with these earthlings.
Or how not to.
And how not to. Originally he told them just don't do the wrong thing. And now God has learned, in a sense, doing tshuva, God has learned, no, they need laws. They need...
God forbid God should do tshuva.
Well.
God forbid. So God, let's see what God's answer is.
To me, it looks like a giant cleansing. It's
okay.
Like,
so
water is bad.
It's definitely a reset.
Cleansing.
Mehmet, did you want to say something?
God's motivation to start over and over again, and seeing every time that we make mistakes. I find that actually very naive, but perhaps that naivety is the only way to move forward with each other, or with ourselves.
Well, to Bert's point, God seems to learn and isn't so naive again. Like God doesn't. God at the end of our story says, "Okay, I get it. That's not going to work." Right? Like God doesn't stay in that place of, okay, next time it gets really bad, I'll just start over. God seems to get it that's not going to fix it. Laura?
It seems that God's letting humans, God seeing that there's some progress. I mean, I'm just go along with this sort of hopefulness. Like everything is really rotten, but here's this one. In all this rottenness is actually worth it. So, all right, this time we now got the right recipe. Let's go again. It doesn't seem, and that also argues back to maybe he is a righteous man, and it's not about
just in his generation. Mm-hmm. Okay, and even if he's righteous only in his generation, not compared to a really good generation, does that matter? Isn't he still possibly righteous? Just to exactly. Like it doesn't necessarily discount that he's behaving righteously because he refuses to buy in. Maybe if you're righteous in that kind of a generation, you're more righteous than somebody who's living in a monastery and is never tempted.
You're the exact kind of human we need.
Exactly. Because we know what's going to happen, right, in the world. All right, did I see another? No. Wait. Maybe. Hang on.
I think someone mentioned it before. Beasts that were not pure.
Okay, so we have clean and unclean animals. Clean and unclean for what?
Eating.
They haven't eaten animals.
Yes.
They've not eaten animals. So what would clean and unclean have to do?
Can't be the sanctuary.
Yes. It's what's clean and unclean for sacrificial use. So we haven't been told how Noach knows that, but you're going to need more of the clean animals because some of them are going to get disposed of. And so you need more of those than you do of the unclean, right? Because you're going to be using the clean ones for sacrifice. All right, so... No. But that's the only way you can define clean and unclean. The first thing Noach does when he gets off the boat, as we're going to see, is he offers a sacrifice. So even though so they're not just making that assumption, like jumping to it, but you have to do something with clean and unclean. And if they're not eating the animals, what does pure and impure, mean? It has to mean something probably ritual, right? Which means sacrifice. And he offers a sacrifice the minute he gets off the boat. So he knows about sacrifice. Even if we haven't been told that he knows. All right, so are we? So we're clean and unclean, yes? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, go ahead.
6. Noach was 600 years old when the flood came, waters upon the earth.
What, did we get that far? Of
Yeah, 7 verse 6.
For in 7 days' time, blah, blah, blah. 40 days and 40 nights, right? It's going to rain.
And Noah did just that. We're finished. Yeah. 600 years ago, Noah, with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives, went into the ark because of the waters of the flood. Of the pure animals, of the animals that are not pure, of the birds, and of everything that creeps on the ground, 2 of each, male and female, came to Noah into the ark, as God had commanded Noah. And on the 7th day, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst apart, and the floodgates of the sky broke open.
Okay, so let's stop there. Now, Bert, tell us, why do the rabbis have to mitigate Noah's righteousness?
Because he didn't do what Moses did.
Which is?
He didn't complain.
Not
God
just,
says, I'm going to destroy everything. And Noah says, okay.
not just Moses.
Abraham, right? Sacrifice, right?
Noah goes into the ark, takes everybody into the ark, and says, okay, I've got my galoshes, and I'm ready. We have, In-N-Out burgers. We are ready for however long this is going to take, right? That is not what God wants in a leader. That is not what God wants from humanity. God wants someone who's going to argue back. God wants Abraham to say, if there's one righteous soul,
right.
If there's, and God says, Abraham says 10. God says, find me one. Fine, right? So God wants humankind to argue against divine injustice.
He wants a leader to do that, but you said Moses is the leader.
For the rabbis, it's a dugma. It's an example. That the person, the only one God could find that was worth saving was one who wasn't willing to argue. That's why he's tzaddik b'dorotav, not tzaddik in general. I'm just telling you what the rabbis say. I'm not arguing. I don't have an opinion here for once. For the rabbis, that's what I love about that tradition is I love that we come from a tradition that the highest mark of what makes you a tzaddik is not that you just follow the word of God. You don't just obey. Hahefech, lahavdil, the opposite. What makes you a tzaddik is that you are willing to argue against the divine decree, whatever it is. If you feel it is unjust and you have access to the master of the universe, you're expected to use it. And otherwise you have failed God's own assessment of what is a tzaddik. I just love that that's our our rabbinic tradition. All right, whether it's fair to Noach or not is a whole nother subject. Okay, so go on, Bert.
The rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. That same day, Noach and Noach's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, went into the ark with Noah's wife and the 3 wives of his sons. They and all beasts of every kind, all cattle of every kind, all creatures of every kind that creep on the earth, and all birds of every kind, every bird, every winged thing, they came to Noach into the ark, 2 each of all flesh, in which there was breath of life. Thus they entered comprised, male and female. Thus they that entered comprised, male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in.
Okay. So now again, back to 2 of every kind, male and female of everything.
This says they just showed up.
On the earth.
Noah didn't have to figure out who was male and female. They just kind of showed up.
They showed up. So the... Oh my gosh. All right, if you look at verse 11, and you look there at the end of verse 11, all the fountains of the great deep burst apart, and the floodgates of the sky broke open. That is a typical parallelism Where do we see parallelisms like this? Huh?
Parallelism.
Where do we see parallelism? Saying the same thing two different ways. Where do we see that? Poetry.
Poetry.
Hebrew biblical poetry. Scholars look to these two lines to say, originally, most likely, this was an epic poem, as is some of the ones that we have found from the ancient world that are parallel narratives. That probably this was an epic poem at one time, but it gets woven into Genesis, as one of the pieces of source material for Genesis in front of the author of Genesis, the redactor who's putting together all these pieces, right, to make Bereshit, to make Genesis. So this is one of those literary, right, places that we can look and say, okay, definitely that is characteristic of Hebrew poetry. This was maybe once upon a time. Because we have found other epic poems about the flood narrative in Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia, possibly this too originally was an epic poem like that.
Why does verse 12 in this book have parentheses around it?
I don't know. The
Verse 12.
rain fell for, 40 days and 40 nights? Verse 12.
No, in the JPS translation.
Yeah. My JPS has parentheses, but Robert Alter does not.
And in Hebrew, there's no parentheses.
And I have no note in my text.
It says the flood actually lasted for 150 days.
All right, wait. Are people reading ahead? Okay, let's go to 17. Verse 17.
The flood continued 40 days on the earth, and the waters increased and raised the ark so that it rose above the earth. The waters swelled and increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark drifted upon the waters. When the waters had swelled much more upon the earth, all the highest mountains everywhere under the sky were covered. 15 cubits higher did the waters swell as the mountains were covered, and all flesh that stirred on earth perished. Birds, cattle, beasts, and all the things that swarmed upon the earth, and all mankind. All in whose nostrils was the merest breath of life, all that was on dry land died. All existence on earth was blotted out, man, cattle, creeping things, and birds of the sky. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noach was left, and those with him in the ark.
All right. So, what life did not perish?
What was in the ark?
What was in the ark?
Fish!
A fish.
They're already in the water.
Rabbis say, and fish's eyes don't close. They keep them open. The fish were witnesses to the destruction.
So did they get credit for part of this chapter?
All right. So we see that we get this other number thrown around, right? 150, right? If you take these two texts, you can see the seams between the texts. This is how the text is right now. You can pull them apart and read each story completely independently. And then you would have to cut them up and put them back together to have the text that we have. But it is that plain, it is that clear that there are two independent sources. We have the Yahwist, we have the J tradition, and we have the P tradition. And these are two stories that are put together. It is very clear. If you see them pulled apart, you can never see them unpulled apart again. Right? They leap off the page. And in the book, Who Wrote the Bible? He does that, and he puts them in different fonts. So he gives you one version, then you read the other version, and then he puts them together in different fonts. And I can never unsee this text, right, that way. It is very clear. And it's not even that much work to pull them apart, right? They read completely independently of each other. It's not like they try to mish it and mash it and whatever. They just pull from here, pull from here, pull from here, pull from here, and they braid it together. All right. Yes?
Want to move on from this, but do the rabbis have an explanation
So you tell me.
Explanation.
I don't know of one. Do you have one?
God was so tired.
Again with the mud, again with the clay, and the breathing into it, and the whole animating thing.
You're never going to read that much again. Use this one.
All right. Let's just read to the end.
And when the waters had swelled on the earth 150 days, God remembered Noach and all the beasts and all the cattle that were with him in the ark. And God caused a wind to blow across the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the floodgates of the sky were stopped up, and the rain from the sky was held back. The waters then receded steadily from the earth. At the end of 150 days, the waters diminished, so that in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The waters went on diminishing until the 10th month. And in the 10th month, on the 1st of the month, the tops of the mountains became visible.
Keep going.
Okay, at the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent out the raven. It went to and fro until the waters had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out the dove to see whether the waters had decreased from the surface of the ground. But the dove could not find a resting place for its foot, and returned to him to the ark, for there was water over all the earth. So putting out his hand, he took it into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again sent out the dove from the ark. The dove came back to him toward evening, and there in its bill was a plucked off olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the waters had decreased on the earth. He waited still another 7 days and sent the dove forth, and it did not return to him anymore. In the 601st year, in the 1st month, on the 1st of the month, the waters began to dry from the earth, and when Noah removed the covering of the ark, he saw that the surface of the ground was drying, and in the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dry.
Go ahead.
More?
Yep.
God spoke to Noah, saying, "Come out of the ark, together with your wife, your sons, and your sons' wives. Bring out with you every living thing of all flesh that is with you, birds, animals, and everything that creeps on earth. And let them swarm on the earth and be fertile and increase on earth." So Noah came out, together with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives. Every animal, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that stirs on earth came out of the ark by families.
All right. So again, we're getting a reset of creation. You are to be fertile and increase and fill the world. Then Noach built an altar to God, and taking of every clean animal and of every clean bird, he offered burnt offerings on the altar. So he knows the difference between clean and unclean. He knows which ones are suitable for offerings and which are not. And he obviously knows how to make an offering to God. God smelled the pleasing odor, and God said to God's self, "Never again will I doom the earth because of these humans, since the devisings of humans' minds are evil from their youth, nor will I ever again destroy every living being as I have done." So what has God learned? God's learned a couple of things. God is not going to be naive anymore. God gets it, that this is what we're dealing with when we're dealing with human beings. It's what it is.
Human beings with free will. He could have taken that back.
Yes,
and he never
100%.
did.
If we're going to deal with human beings and leave them with free will, God goes, this is what I'm stuck with. Like, I can't destroy them every time they are who they are, because they are who they are. And I think in our tradition, what I love about this is that God accepts who we are.
Right.
God goes, okay, right? So then what's going to happen is, you've heard of the 7 Noahide laws, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what comes next. What comes next is God says, don't murder. Right? Don't do these 7 things, you humans. So what God learns is human beings need instruction. We need direction. You can't just plop us down. You can't just take a bunch of toddlers and put them in a room and say, okay, have fun, play nice with each other. What's going to happen? Tommy's going to take Janie's truck and hit her over the head with it. That's who we are. So what we need is a loving teacher standing by saying, Tommy, it's not nice to hit our friend Janie in the head with a truck. We don't do that with our friends. We need instruction. And for us, instruction is a loving thing. Torah, for us, is God's proving God's love for us in giving us instruction about how it is that we're supposed to behave. The Noahide laws are for all of humanity, right? And that for our tradition is in place until today. That all of humanity are obligated to the 7 Noahide laws because they come from, everyone descends from Noach. So that covenant, the first covenant, is in place with all of humanity. When God says, I'm not going to do this again, God makes a promise, God gives instruction, that is in place for all of humanity. And that it is a loving thing, and that God learns that we have to learn, right? And that we need to be given instruction, not just free will, but instruction about how to control it. Elena?
So how does that fit in with the comment in line 21 that says the human mind inclines to evil from youth onward? They don't say birth.
Because I don't know. I don't know. I don't know any commentary on it, and I don't see it because I think it's the awakening of really icky desires. Na'arav, and na'ar is a young boy.
But are we born?
We are. This has nothing to do with pure.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with. We are, of course, we are born pure, but that's rabbinic. The neshama is pure. That is rabbinic. There is no neshama in the Bible. There's no pure, impure how you're born in the Bible. You're born with free will. You're born, according to the rabbis, with the inclination to good and to evil. But we are pulled towards evil
that's what
from our youth. Right? That is just...
Once we're aware.
God knows we have a proclivity to be greedy, to lie, to steal, we have a proclivity for that, and God gets it and says, okay, this is what I'm stuck with unless I want to start from the beginning and start all over again, right? So in this last fire business, it was clear that we were going to leave our house because we just couldn't deal anymore with not knowing if we were going to have to run. The car was packed, and it was just ridiculous to try to relax or do anything, because we also knew if everybody needed to get out of there because it was a mandatory evacuation, we knew what that was going to mean on Palisades Drive and on Sunset and on the PCH. So any way you sliced it, it was going to be miserable to try to get out of there if there was a mandatory evacuation. So we decided to just, and the winds were about to pick up, it was going to be that horrible night of wind, and Judy was a wreck. And so we had this conversation, and then I thought, this is like, what about Mrs. Noah? Right? Like Judy's like, and I'm like, whatever. Like, I'll take a bath, I'll read, it'll be fine, And she's running around, and she's like so focused. She's watching the news. She's looking for the alert. She's looking out the window. Where are the helicopters? Where's the thing? What's the wind speeds? What's the direction? Oh my God, is this packed? Did we remember that? And I'm like, what? Like, what goes on? Like, and so like I realized that we were living in like two completely different realities. Her world was about to possibly explode, and she was reacting appropriately if your world is about to come apart. And I was like, we don't have any evidence that the wind is going to pick up any embers and do anything. And if it is, they're there. We know the wind speed. They're watching. Like, what is, nothing's happened. And like, I just realized, so we were in these two completely different realities and two completely different places. And I thought, well, what about Mrs. Noach? If it's just, you know how long it takes to cut the wood to build a boat like this? Like, he's running around like a crazy person, like, harvesting all this stuff and putting it away and making sure it's going to stay dry and making sure and like, the rabbis say he did this for 120 years. He prepared for the flood. 120 years it took him to grow the tree and cut the wood and saw it and polish it and measure it and Mrs. Noach, what is she doing? I'm sure she's just going like, did she hear God? Probably not. Right? And so she either has to support him in this crazy and escape plan, or she has to go, you know what, honey? Like, if this makes you feel better, you and the boys go cut wood. I'm going to be over here, right, with the women. Like, we're working on a new dance, and, like, we're going to bring it out at, Hanukkah. So, like, what does it mean to have, we just assume because it happens, this is the story. But, like, I was just thinking about the conversations between, right, the Noach family as they are putting all of this energy and time and all of these resources towards something that she might think is never going to happen. But if she supports him, it's because she knows he believes this is going to happen, and he's really concerned about it. And so I'm like, okay, so I guess we'll be leaving the house, right? Because I was fine, but it's like, okay, but she wasn't fine. And whether those embers burned into anything or not, her reality wasn't going to change, right? And so it's about, okay, so then sometimes you just live in someone else's reality, because if you can't bring them out of it, you're going to need to go in it with them if you're going to be, right, in any way supportive and whatever. And the other thing was that Eliana, when we left, she wanted to go to her friend's house who lives in Santa Monica, and I said, okay, and she hangs out there all the time, and the friend lives with her older sister who's a model, who's like 27, so that, are you kidding? That's like, they play house, it's the best, whatever. So she wants to go there, and I said, well, if you go there, could you take the dog? Because if she could take the dog, then we could go to a hotel, like a nice hotel, not a hotel that welcomes dogs. So,
not two dogs, a male and
no,
female.
not male and female. It's a spayed rescue one-eyed Chihuahua. So, which Judy probably would have been happy to leave. So Eliana decides. So then I'm like, am I really going to ask her to do this? Like, and I thought I don't know that I can turn over my responsibility for the dog to this young person who's never had that kind of responsibility for her. Like, it's one thing to walk her every day in our place. It's another thing, you're in a strange neighborhood. What if someone leaves the door open? The dog is a sprinter, she's a runner. What if she's walking her and there's some really scary dogs in the neighborhood? Like, can I do this to her? Can I do this to Ellie?
For her. For the dog.
And can I do this to the dog? Like, and I was just like, oh, that is what God had to ask God's self, right? Like, of course she's never had to do that before, because she's never had to do that before. Does that mean she can't do it? Does that mean she's not responsible? No, it means I've not been willing to trust her with this little creature before. And so, like, Noach, is he tzaddik enough? Is he bright enough? Is he really able to take care of all those animals and be responsible for all life on earth? He's never done it before, right? Like, how do you know until you turn over care and responsibility for all those creatures to Noach? How do you know if he and his family can do it? So, like, I guess for me, I was like, I hadn't really thought about that aspect of the story before, about God going, well, if I don't turn it over, I guess what are my options? I guess I could keep all the animals safe in a box on the top of a hill, right? But if I don't give Noach and his family responsibility for these life forms, then how will humanity ever take responsibility, learn that they can be responsible and they can do it, and they are now? Like, she said to me, I said to her, I texted her, I'm really proud of how you've handled all this. And she said, thank you for trusting me. Right? And so she became something and learned something about herself and thanked me for that opportunity because she knew it was a move for me to get there. Right? She knew that I had to do some work to get from, you know what, we'll just get a hotel where we can have the dog, to, okay, I'm going to trust you with her. Right? And so this whole idea of God has to trust Noach's family with everything that God has created. Every creature. Like part of my problem was I'm responsible for Olivia. Right? In making this decision, it could mean her destruction or serious harm to her. But if I don't, right? And so this moment, I realized that this character, God, has to decide, okay, maybe something terrible will happen to all of these life forms if I turn over responsibility to humanity. But if I don't, will humanity ever learn? And then I think to myself, okay, so guess what? God gave us the dog. What are we doing? How many species are going extinct on our watch? How many ecosystems, right, are being completely disrupted because of our irresponsibility, our refusal to own that those creatures are dependent on us. It's been given into our care. I know I'm not a literalist about this stuff, right? But it has been given into our care, these creatures. And they are innocent, and they are fragile, and they are vulnerable. And the message for me this year about this story is, A, can we hear each other and the realities that each of us lives in and just try to show up for one another and support each other and build an ark, if that's what we need to do, whether or not we believe a flood is coming. And the other is, can we get it that God risked something in giving over? Precious. God risked something precious in giving all life into our care. Because that's where we're at. Whether it's a nuclear explosion or anything else, all life is in our care. May we use that responsibility well, and may we take it extremely seriously, and may we get it that we've been entrusted. Because God believes we can do this. Shabbat Shalom.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.